Today I'm flying from London Heathrow Terminal 4 to Shanghai in China, and this time I'm flying via Bahrain on Gulf Air. Check-in on business class was nice and easy, and it's the first time I've actually flown with Gulf Air, so I was pleasantly surprised. Straight through security and then into departures, and made my way through to the business lounge. The business lounge is situated just next to the Pret. Check-in was nice and easy, just show your boarding pass as always, and then through to have some breakfast. The selections were really nice. The ambience in the business lounge was nice and peaceful. And actually, I really enjoyed this experience.
So this is my first time flying Gulf Air. Flying to Shanghai today, so it's a long journey. I'm going to see if I can document it for you. 787 Dreamliner. I have to say the lounge at London Heathrow Terminal 4 is pretty cool. The ambience is really calm, it's really peaceful. They've got some nice piano music in the background, the staff are smiling and happy. Compare it to the Emirates Lounge in Terminal 3, which is bigger, obviously. They have more flights a day. So this just feels a little bit less hectic, which is actually quite a pleasant surprise. So looking forward. I just had some breakfast because it's early in the morning. And in a minute I'm going to leave the lounge and go for a walk, because sitting down on a plane for a long time, I think it's going to be about 23 hours of travel for me now. I want to get the steps in before sitting down on my ass all day, which can be quite boring, even if you're in business class, which I'm flying today. So it'd be interesting. Let's see. So one of the things you can do if you don't have business lounge access, or like me, I actually have business lounge access, but I like to go for a walk. Whenever you come through security, that's always going to be one of the busiest areas of any airport. But if you want a quiet area, walk to the end of the airport, and you're always going to find some areas that have got lots of spare seating, and it's a lot more quiet. So if you value that, that's one of my tips that I do. Do this when I go for a walk before boarding a flight. So begins the boarding experience, heading to board this 787 Dreamliner and find my seat. I'm in 2 Alpha today, so let's see what it's like.
I was one of the first people to board, so heading down to the plane now, and let's find out what the seating looks like and what the boarding experience is like.
So first impressions, cabin crew were really polite and nice. I have to say there is a lot of space for the feet. I mean, I'm 6'1", and sitting down I can't even touch the end there, so that's good. It's a little bit well worn in terms of the seat controls, but you know, you expect that when you're travelling on busy flights and popular flights. So all in all, so far it's looking good. Looking forward to getting going and see what the in-flight experience is like.
Electronic cigarettes. Thank you.
So we've left Heathrow now, and we're flying, just about to head over France. You can see on the map there. One of the things with these business class seats is there is a divide there, and until takeoff, the person next to me could pretty much see my phone if they wanted to. Not that there's much worth looking at, but after takeoff, there's a nice little button that you can press just there, and that just raises that little barrier, gives a little bit more privacy. I would say the window seats on a 787 Dreamliner with Gulf Air are actually pretty good, because there's free access. You don't have to step over anybody. If I want to get out, all I need to do is just kind of like go around that corner, and I'm not having to step over anybody. So I have to say, so far, I've been pretty impressed.
Before the meal was served, it was time to get some snacks, a nice cup of tea, and I don't even know what that was actually, but it was quite tasty. And time to check out the in-flight entertainment. Very limited movie options, I have to say. They had films like Lethal Weapon, which was released in the late 1980s, and Cats and Dogs. And the user interface isn't overtly friendly. But as always, I download stuff on my phone and I need to watch anything from Netflix or Disney or Apple, that's what I tend to do.
The airline do provide you with noise-cancelling headphones in business class, but I prefer to use my own. I have my Bose noise-cancelling headphones, but one thing that I've noticed is it's really difficult to find the connection, which is buried deep under, in this case, the right-hand side of the seat. If you use their own headphones, there's like a magnetic connection. And I also noticed that my normal adapter that I bring with me, that doesn't work. But that said, I have managed to put it in with just the normal, I think 3.5mm, just that, no adapter. I've got stereo, and I'm just about to embark on a movie, Salem's Lot. Should be scary.
On this flight, we had one meal service, as it was a relatively short flight. I opted for the salmon and vegetables and potatoes, and of course, the very nice cheesecake dessert. All in all, it was actually really, really tasty. Got some nice views. I've no idea where this was because I was too busy trying to watch the movie. But then, of course, tiredness kicks in and it's time to lay down flat. And I have to say, probably the biggest space I've seen when flying in a business class seat. So nice and comfortable, time for a nap. As you can see, the cabin is relatively quiet and that allows you to get some good rest. And we were approaching Bahrain in this relatively short flight of just over 6 hours. And it was a nice smooth landing coming in. It was night time when we landed in Bahrain. And it's been a long time since I've been here. But it was nice and easy, nice and smooth. And Bahrain itself is a relatively small country, but it's really easy to navigate. Coming into land at this point. Touchdown, nice and simple. And then, of course, we're starting to think about unbuckling the seatbelts and getting through to the next part of the journey. Making our way to the gates at this point, and it wasn't long before the doors were opening and we were allowed off. Now, as always, I try to walk off as quickly as I can. I want to get to immigration or I want to get to security if I'm transiting like I do on this flight as quickly as possible, just to minimize any delays. The less people in front of me, the better in my view. So where I can, I'm always looking to walk really quickly. One of the reasons I wear sports gear when I travel, not just for comfort, but also for speed. Navigating through Bahrain, you can see immigration on the right there, but I was transiting, so it's just a short walk up the steps or the travelator through security and then into departures. And I have to say, the new Bahrain Airport is really shiny, really easy to navigate. And unlike Dubai International Airport, it's big, but it's obviously not as big. And that makes it a lot easier for you to find your next gate. Before I went to the business lounge, I decided to stretch my legs and went for a walk. It was a little too early to find out where my next gate was departing from, but it's always good to get a layout of the land. When I'm traveling through Dubai, I kind of like instinctively know where things are because I've traveled through Dubai so often. But as this was my first time coming into Bahrain, it's always good to get a sense of where things are. So a good stretch of the legs, walking up and down, getting a sense of where all the gates are. And in this airport, it looked like all of the gates were kind of like on one side of the airport, going from, I'm assuming, gate 1 all the way through up to gate, I think it was 22, which was the last gate that I saw on my walk. Actually, a pretty decent flight. It was only about just short of 6 hours 30, I think, in total on the flight. Landed in Bahrain. I think this is the first time I've been to this. I think it's a new airport. I'm not sure. Anyway, I've got access to the business lounge, but my connecting flight doesn't leave for about another 4 hours. So I'm going for a walk, check out the new airport. It's a pretty simple airport. It's quite simple to find all the gates. They seem to be lined up on one side of the building, from what I can tell. But it's a good opportunity to stretch the legs, get out and do a little bit of a walk. So once I've got the layout of the land, and actually this gate was where we eventually was getting my connecting flight to Shanghai from. I ended up walking back into the main area. That's where most of the shops and restaurants are. And then eventually, once I'd had a good look around, checked some of the shops out, where I could get some food if I wanted, it was time to make my way up to the business lounge. So after a good stretch of the legs, it was time to make my way to the business lounge and find out what the next gate was, and also, of course, to get some food. I had actually intended to take a shower on this trip, but in the end I decided I didn't need it. So just a quick tour of the lounge, got some information about the connecting gates. Again, my flight wasn't showing yet because it was quite a long time until my departure, but it's nicely spaced out, nice and clean, and again, relatively quiet. There's a lot of passengers even this late at night. I believe it's a 24-hour airport. Walked through to see what the food options were like. It was okay. There was some desserts, there were some main courses, there were some pizzas, and of course rice dishes and stuff like that. On the left you can see some of the key options there. Wasn't huge, and although this was the main area of the lounge where you could get some food, there were other areas where you could go which were a little bit quieter. I believe there were some gaming consoles there, but as you can see, it's a relatively quiet lounge. We've got some more food options here. This was kind of like the fast food area, and then some more of the maybe more tasty foods along here. I did have to find out where do you keep the glasses. On the right hand side you can see the juices there. The glasses were actually just under on the right hand side. Some snacks and some desserts. I then made my way along trying to find out, and I always try to find a quiet part of the lounge, which is normally going to be the furthest away from the entrance area. So as I made my way down here, I noticed that there was a bar. And again, the staff were really hospitable, really polite. And on the left, you can see just down there, that's the concourse that I walked down earlier. There is a pool table. Didn't see anybody playing pool. Also noted there were no balls or cues. And this was a non-operational golf simulator.
So in the Falcon Lounge, which is kind of like business lounge for the Gulf airline, in the lounge in Bahrain Airport, you can actually step outside and get some fresh air, which at this time of year, kind of like mid-March, it's still quite cool in the evening, which is nice fresh air. The one thing is, this is the smoking area, but the good thing is there's hardly anyone here. So I've come outside, get some steps in, and to get some fresh air. If it's a bit hotter, I'm guessing that bit in there is air conditioned, although I can only imagine how that smells. And then you get a nice little view down here of the gates heading towards 20A and 20B. That's the bit that I walked down a little bit earlier. So yeah, it's quite nice. I don't think I'd want to be out here in June. That would be a little bit too spicy.
And eventually it's time for the connecting flight. This is a longer flight from Bahrain to Shanghai. Time to get on board. And this time I was on an aisle seat and it wasn't as comfortable. I'll explain why in a moment or two.
So it's 10:30 in the evening in Bahrain. We're getting on board now. I'm in my next seat, 2 Golf, which is not a window seat. But anyway, I'll probably sleep on this flight. Only downside with this one, it's right by the aisle, so you kind of like have people walking past you, but hopefully as it's a night flight, there won't be too many people getting up and about. Anyway, eyes down, here we go, flight number 2.
As I'd already eaten in the lounge, I decided to just have some light bites, which was some fruit. But as it turned out, this wasn't a quiet flight. Unfortunately, a couple opposite me had a young child, and I think the child had slept recently because although it was a night flight, they were crying a lot. But after a few hours, eventually we made it into Shanghai, and it's time to get off the plane and make my way to immigration. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is you're coming into Pudong Airport, PVG. When you first get off the plane and make your way through to immigration, before you go down the stairs, you will see, in this case on the right-hand side, you're going to see a bank of machines. If you're coming from the other side, obviously it would be on your left-hand side. This is where you would scan your passport. For what reason, I do not know, but they ask you to scan your passport and then you get this little ticket. I tried to film it, but it was a little bit difficult to use my hand whilst filming, but I was putting my passport in there. And then just on the left-hand side of the machine, it gives you a little ticket. And then you take that and you present that to the immigration officers. You can see some people filling out some forms there. I do ask the airline whenever I'm flying into Pudong to give me the form on the plane to save time when I'm actually landing. Then it's time to make our way down to the immigration hall. So down the escalator. I always now travel with a backpack that allows me a little bit more flexibility on speed rather than carrying a small trolley case. Making your way along here, I'm hitting the turbo at this point. I want to get to immigration as quickly as possible. And weirdly, although I've been to Shanghai many times, this was the first time I'd ever been to Shanghai without previously having a car booked for me. So I was about to enter into unknown territory, needing to get through, get my bags, and then actually find a taxi. And I was going to be using Alipay for the very, very first time as well. But it all went smoothly.
The other visit that I've come to Shanghai, I've always had a taxi booked for me. On this visit, I decided I was going to get my own taxi. I got accosted by somebody coming out of the baggage claim with a label on their thing saying airport staff, and they've walked me down to not a taxi, but like a private taxi. In this case, it's a Tesla. Show me the price. It's about 345 RMB, which is it's probably about £35. It's actually not too bad, given that it's about a 45-minute journey. But let's just see if he's going to take me to the right hotel. And on this occasion, I'm going to be paying for the very first time using Alipay, which I set up back in the UK just a couple of days ago. So we shall see.
I was quite surprised that we were in a Tesla, given that the Chinese EV market is absolutely fantastic. And if you ever get a chance to visit China, you will notice a huge amount of electric vehicles. A lot of them are Chinese made, including BYD, Build Your Dreams, which I have to say in China, they've got a great selection of models and they really do look great.
So far, it seems we're on track. We're heading in the right direction. I've got my Google Maps, and although Google doesn't really work that well here in mainland China, it still can get you around if you're using your 4G, because 4G tends to bypass some of their firewalls, so I can still access on 4G like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc., Google services. So it says we're 9 minutes away. We shall see. So Google Maps is now saying 5 minutes away. I'm quite hopeful because it seems to be following this map, which is good. And we were just stuck at some traffic lights, and he just asked me a thing via translation tool, asking if I wanted a lift back on my return trip. So I'm hoping that means I'm not going to get scammed on this one. Shanghai years ago used to be quite scammy, and you do need to be mindful of it, but I do believe it's got a lot safer over recent years. But Google Maps is now telling me 5 minutes away. Let's see.
At this point, we were getting really close to the hotel, so I was very comfortable that I wasn't going to get scammed. And as you can see, China, and particularly Shanghai, where I visit a lot, it's so beautiful. I love how modern it is, how clean it is, how the transportation just works. So we were getting a bit closer. It's part of a new build area where my hotel was. I'd never been there before. I'd always stayed on the other side of Shanghai. But as we got closer, Google Maps was telling me it was there. We had to stop a couple of times just to check where the exact location of the entrance of the hotel was. But eventually we managed to get closer and closer. And then this lovely security guard confirmed that we were nearly there.
And that's the hotel.
And finally, after hours and hours of travel, managed to get into my room, which I have to say I was really pleased with. It was really good size, really good decor, nice and clean, functional, and the bathroom / shower room was enormous. And then the view was beautiful. In the far distance, you could see the Pearl Tower.